The way that many people begin learning coding and the way that we've learned it called with what's called a REPL loop, which stands for read, evaluate, print loop. I guess it's technically just a REPL, like an ATM machine is just an ATM, but you often hear it called the REPL loop. This is read, evaluate, print loop. This is what we have been doing. We have been assuming that there is a human being who will be able to interact with code. In that case, the human being is us. Because everything we've done has been something where we were typing something in and then we were looking at. So we've essentially been using Python and Jupyter Notebook up to this point as kind of like a souped up Excel almost. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are lots of times where data scientists do that. However, it's important by the time you leave this class that you be capable of moving from only using the REPL process to automating things. Because the real power of computers and coding is that you can make something be automatic. That you can take something that you know how to do one time and you can abstract that process to where you can do it repeatedly, hundreds of times. There's a command called input, which actually asks the user for input. So if you look at something like x equals input, what's your name? What will happen is the computer will actually print out what's your name, and whatever you type, it will store in the variable x. And then when we hit Shift Enter in a Jupyter Notebook, we just see the result. But it's not actually stored anywhere unless we tell it to, unless we say something equals something. So the other thing that people have, that people fall in love with doing sometimes, is they want their function to print something. So the print command just prints whatever is in the screen. Hi there. This just prints to the screen. These are really helpful if it's important to you to see what your program is doing. But when you think about large scale programs, do you want to be sitting there to type in every single number that you're going to be working with? And is it important to you that you see every single number you're working with printed to the screen, like thousands of things just scrolling by? This is like Hollywood hacker adrenaline. It feels good, like, oh, something's happening. But in reality, you want to be able to leave it and let the concrete sit overnight and come back and know that the concrete is set. Just because you don't see it happening doesn't mean it's not happening. Does that make sense? Previous classes where they thought every function had to start with input and end with print. Instead of asking for the variable you want as input, I would encourage you to write this as a function. So you do your def f, and you let whatever your x value is, you let whatever your input value be what goes here. And then you do the logic of whatever is required to process it. And at the end, you want to return whatever your final output answer is. So to start with, I've given you something. All right, so this notebook, I envision, for some of you, this will be like, but if this is totally new to you, be patient with yourself. I envision this as something like a 20 or 30-minute exercise where some issues will pop up and we'll see what we can do. And it's kind of self-paced, but we'll all be together here to address issues that may pop up. Okay, so I will give you the rest of this to complete as one of the small assignments for this upcoming week, but I did want to specifically do convert to Celsius. So we have def convert to Celsius currently as something that will require a person to be there. And so our variable var temp is requested with an input command. And then we do our cells temp conversion, which is just taking var temp and doing the 5/9 times var temp minus 32. And then we're printing the value of var temp. I was told in the chat that you can do this with commas to multiple arguments instead of doing the plus. So this is how it currently looks, but the issue is this will require a person to be there to type in the input and to read the output. And we don't want that. We want it to be automated. So is there a way we could rewrite this so that it does those things automatically? What would you do? We're going to call this new function auto convert to Celsius. What's the first difference between the convert to Celsius and the auto convert? Put var temp into the argument of the function Just like we're used to seeing f of x, and we know that we're going to be plugging x in, here we're going to be plugging in var temp. Thank you. What's another, what else, what stays the same? Does cells temp have any modifications? I realize that you're right from like a memory optimization perspective, that I'm assigning a variable I don't need to. But I'm just so worried that I'm accidentally going to return just 5/9 or something. So at least let me put parentheses around the 5/9.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying I don't need to store cells temp, I can just say return this. All right, we'll do that. So all we've done is take our input variable. Now we don't see it unless we ask for it. It's just going to do that calculation. But in general, you don't want your screen to just be like flooded with prints, which is what will happen if you try to call this on multiple things. And one more thing, someone asked, how would I do this on a list if I had a long list of values? There are a couple of different ways. The one I want to recommend is map. In general, for loops are one of the big things you can look for as places that people slow things down needlessly. It's easier to understand, but there are lots of ways to work around them that turn out to be faster. So this is the goal. I want you, as you're looking at your code, when you're writing a function, don't think of it in terms of something you need to input and print. Think of it as something that you want to be able to automate, that you could call from another function or call from a script. And that's just something I want to offer you. Admiral Grace Hopper, one of the first programmers, there was a whole cryptography thing. We need smart people. She said, I'm a smart person. So she became an admiral, which is worth noting, because, you know, it's not something everyone does. She wrote a lot of the code for the Navy. She did a lot of work on cryptography, but she was having a program that wasn't working, and she went in the computer and there's actually a moth fluttering around inside of it. So she pulled the moth out and then taped it to her notebook and said, I found the bug. And that's why computer errors are called bugs.